All right, so now we're leading towards another expedition that is going to be sent out by Governor Velasquez in Cuba, and this expedition is going to be led by Fernando Cortez, right? Otherwise known as Hernando Cortez or Hernan Cortez, right? Same individual. We recently found out that his name is actually Fernando. That's how he signed his name. We found documents where he had signed his name. So Fernando Cortez is going to lead the third expedition coming from Cuba to Mesoamerica, right? We're talking about Mexico here. All right, so a little bit about Fernando Cortez before we talk about his expedition. For one, back in Spain, he was a law student. He never actually finished his studies because he wasn't quite interested in becoming a lawyer, but he did spend a couple years at university. Eventually, he would travel to the Americas and he would participate in the conquest of Cuba, right? So before Cuba was established, and we have, Governor Velasquez there, it had to be conquered first because there were native people living there, and Cortez participated in that conquest. So he is one of these individuals, right? These lower class individuals. His family is most likely one of those Hidalgo families, and so he came and he participated in this conquest trying to gain wealth and prestige, right? Remember, we were talking about that earlier. And he will be successful, right? So the conquest is successful, and Cortez will be given an estate, right? And so he'll have an estate there where he raises animals, and he'll also be given the rights of Indian laborers who will work for him, right? And so those are the benefits that he gets from participating in the conquest of Cuba. This is all before Cortez goes to Mexico, all right? And so eventually, Velasquez is going to have Cortez lead this expedition, but at the last minute, Velasquez changes his mind. He doesn't want Cortez leading this expedition because he realizes that Cortez is very ambitious and he might just try to take Velasquez's position, right? And so that's not a good thing. So at the last minute before Cortez leaves, Governor Velasquez in Cuba is going to order his arrest. But Cortez finds out about it, and he is able to get his men together and get their supplies and load up their ships and leave Cuba for Mexico before he could be arrested. All right, so he escapes arrest. He has about 11 ships with him, between 400 and 500 men, supplies, weaponry, horses, all of that on this expedition. Now, originally, this expedition was only to establish trade connections with people there in Mexico. Now, Cortez is going to go above and beyond in a sense. He has bigger plans. He doesn't want to just establish contact and trade relations. He wants to conquer, right? And so that is his plan, and he is coming with these several hundred men to Mexico to try to accomplish it. Now, when Cortez arrives, he is going to encounter a Spanish person who is already there in Mexico, a man by the name of Geronimo de Aguilar. And Aguilar is an individual who was shipwrecked in Mexico, and he was basically enslaved by a Mayan people. And so during the time that he was enslaved, he was working as a servant for the Mayans, this Mayan group that he encountered. He is going to learn how to speak the Mayan language. So when Cortez arrives, he sees another Spaniard. Oh my gosh, he runs into Aguilar basically, and Aguilar is happy to see Cortez. He's going to join Cortez's group, and he is going to be a major asset because he knows how to speak Mayan, and he can act as a translator for Cortez. All right, so that was basically good fortune for Cortez, right, to find Aguilar already there in Mexico. From there, Cortez is going to encounter other peoples. He will get into a conflict with a Mayan group, and the Spanish will be successful in defeating them. And afterwards, this Mayan group will give a gift of slaves to Cortez. These are female slaves, about 20 of them. Now, out of these female slaves, there is one in particular that stands out. Her name is Malinche, or Malintzin. Okay, Malinche is what she is commonly known as in history, but more recently she has been known as Malintzin. Malintzin is more of an honorific title. The "tsin" at the end of the name denotes a person of honor. Okay, so a respected person. So Malintzin, we'll just go ahead and call her Malintzin. So Malintzin, why is she an honored person? she's a slave right now, right? She's being given to Cortez as a slave. Why would she be an honored person? Well, the thing is, Malintzin is not Mayan, right? She was enslaved by the Mayans, and she actually was the daughter of a ruler of a small town within the Aztec Empire. Okay, and so her dad was a ruler of like a small city-state. All right, and so that's why we're referring to her as Malintzin, giving her that honorific title because basically she's nobility in that sense. But for some reason, she got enslaved by the Mayans, and she learned to speak Mayan actually, and so this is why she is going to be such a key figure, because when she is given as a slave to Cortez, she's going to become a major asset because she can speak Mayan, but she could also speak Nahuatl, and that's the language that the Aztecs speak, right? She could speak Nahuatl because, you know, from the city where she's from, that's the language that they speak, right? So she's the daughter of a local ruler. She originally spoke Nahuatl, but when she was enslaved by the Mayans, she learned to speak Mayan too. So this, again, is another piece of good luck for Cortez, because now he has a woman here who could speak Mayan and Nahuatl. So basically what this means is when Cortez encounters people that speak Nahuatl, Malintzin can translate Nahuatl into Mayan, and then Aguilar can translate Mayan into Spanish, right? So basically there's two translators, Malintzin and Aguilar. Right, so that's what it's going to take for Cortez to be able to communicate with people that speak Nahuatl, right, including the Aztecs and other people that he's going to encounter. So let's talk a little bit more about these allies that Cortez is going to round up as he marches towards the capital of the Aztec Empire. Alright, so some of these native allies, one, you have a group called the Totonacs or Sempoalans, same people. So the Totonacs, basically, they are a part of the Aztec Empire, but they are not happy with the Aztecs and the way that they rule. Why are they not happy? Because of the system of tribute that the Aztecs exact from the Totonacs. So system of tribute, well, basically, it's kind of like taxation, where you have to supply goods to the Aztecs. Right? So say, if, for example, if your city-state is conquered by the Aztecs, you have to give them tribute, and that tribute may be in the form of labor or goods. Okay? So, for example, maybe you have to give a large portion of corn or beans or other foods that you grow there in your city to the Aztecs, or maybe crafts that you make, such as cotton cloth. You'd have to give an abundance of that to the Aztecs, right? And that would be your tribute. And so this put a lot of extra pressure on the city-states that are within the Aztec Empire. So some groups, like the Totonacs, are not happy with the rule of the Aztecs. And so when Cortez meets the Totonacs, they embrace him. And through the translators, they tell Cortez that there are a lot of city-states who are very unhappy with the Aztecs, and they would be willing to support the Spanish in overthrowing the Aztec Empire. Right? So the Totonacs will become one of the early allies of the Spanish as the Spanish are marching towards the capital of the Aztecs. Okay, we could take a look at the map here to kind of see this march. And so here, over here in the Gulf of Mexico, in Veracruz, you have the Spanish originally landing. This is where Cortez lands, and he is eventually going to make his way over this mountainous area. It's a pretty long march. And they have to go through a lot of rough terrain. As they start making their way into central Mexico, they will encounter a people known as the Tlaxcalans. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about them. The Tlaxcalans were a very powerful confederacy of tribes, and the Aztec Empire had been trying to weaken them and conquer them over a period of time, but they hadn't been successful yet. So when the Spanish encounter the Tlaxcalans, initially they get into a conflict with each other, but eventually they decide to talk, and this is another case where those translators come in handy. And so you're going to have Malintzin translating to the Tlaxcalans, and so ultimately the Tlaxcalans are going to decide to ally with the Spanish against the Aztecs, because the Aztecs are already their enemies, right? And so the Tlaxcalans decide to do this, and possibly the Tlaxcalans may have been trying to use the Spanish, right? Because they see that the Spanish have a superior weapons technology, right? It's difficult to defeat them. And so they decide, hey, maybe we can use these guys to finally overthrow the Aztecs and get them off our back, right? And so it may have been a strategy of the Tlaxcalans to use the Spanish, and also the Spanish are trying to use the Tlaxcalans to overthrow the Aztecs. So it's kind of mutually beneficial for both groups to join together. All right, so now the Spanish have a pretty large alliance that they're building as they march towards the capital. Okay, they got the Totonacs, they got the Tlaxcalans, and other groups as well. Next, from Tlaxcala, the Spaniards and their allies, right? So they have hundreds of allies now with them marching. They're going to go to the city-state of Cholula. Okay, and there in Cholula, there is going to be a massacre that occurs. Why? There's a number of different accounts. The Spanish basically, they say that they believed that the Cholulans were going to attack them, right? A secret attack on the Spaniards. Even though they had welcomed the Spanish into their city at first, they were going to turn on them, right? They had a plan to attack the Spanish. And so the Spanish kind of acted first and ended up massacring a large number of people there in Cholula. But there are other accounts where the Tlaxcalans may have been the instigators behind the massacre because Cholula had recently joined forces with the Aztecs. And the Tlaxcalans felt that Cholula had turned their back on them, so they may have instigated the Spanish to attack the Cholulans. Either way, there was a massive massacre that took place there in Cholula. Okay, and this whole time, while the Spanish are making their way towards the Aztec capital, the emperor, Moctezuma, is sending his emissaries out to speak with the Spanish, right? Because the Aztecs know by this time that the Spanish are on their way. Okay, they have a lot of informants who are notifying the Aztecs and telling them what is happening, right? So they know about the Spanish, they realize that the Spanish are gaining allies, and so the emperor himself, Moctezuma, is going to send out emissaries, messengers, to go speak to the Spanish. And they basically tell the Spanish that they should not come to the Aztec capital. They're very kind to them, and they greet them, and they offer them gifts from the Aztec Empire, but they keep telling the Spanish, now's not a good time, you shouldn't come to the capital, just turn back and go back where you came from, we'll even give you more gifts, right? But the Spanish will not listen to them. They just keep advancing forward, and they say, no, we want to talk to the emperor in person, we want to meet the great emperor, right? But really they're planning on conquering them, right? And so this leads to the question, why did the Aztec Emperor Moctezuma not just attack the Spanish before they got to the capital? Why was he hesitant? Well, there's a number of different reasons. One possible reason is because it was during the rainy season that the Spanish arrived. And during this season, the Aztecs didn't go to war, right? Because they have a large army, they'd be marching through mud, the trails would be all muddy, it would be a mess. It really wouldn't work logistically. And so that's one of the reasons why the Aztec Emperor did not put together a large army and just go and wipe out the Spanish before they even arrived, right? Because they know that they're coming. And so that's one of the reasons. Another reason that has been brought up in the past, and that it was originally in the Spanish accounts of the conquest, was that the Aztecs believed that Cortez was a returning Aztec god who had returned from exile and was going to claim his throne there in the capital of the Aztec Empire. This is going all the way back to the story that we talked about before about Tolpiltin. You may remember the Toltecs, one of the Toltec leaders, Tolpiltin Quetzalcoatl, right? And so we talked about the story where Tolpiltin was sent away in exile from Tula, the Toltec capital, and he went off into the Gulf of Mexico, and he vowed that one day he would return and take back his throne. Right? We talked about that and how maybe he conquered Chichen Itza and the Yucatan. Maybe you remember that. And so there are some accounts, some Spanish accounts that say that the Aztecs believed that the Spanish were Quetzalcoatl, or Tolpiltin Quetzalcoatl, coming back from the east and trying to reclaim his throne. Right? And so this may have been another reason why the emperor was hesitant in attacking the Spanish. Okay, one of the reasons why they said that this was true is because in that year, the year that the Spanish arrived was the same year where it was prophesied that Quetzalcoatl would be returning. Okay, Tzolpiltin Quetzalcoatl. And so it was the year 1 read when the Spanish arrived. And so that was supposed to be the year when Tzolpiltin Quetzalcoatl was going to return, right? So it's possible, but there more recently have been scholars that doubt that the Aztecs actually believed that the Spanish were gods or that they were this returning god. So the Spanish will move forward, even though the Aztecs are telling them, no, do not come to the capital. You know, we can't receive you right now. But the Spanish will push forward. So from Cholula, where the massacre takes place, the Spanish are going to continue on to the capital city of Tenochtitlan. All right, and eventually they will meet the emperor face to face. Okay.